My beta broke my ribs when I refused to give him the money from selling my farm. But then the alpha. The wind whispered through the tall grass of the old farm, carrying the scent of rain yet to fall. The sky was a blanket of gray, heavy and low, and the trees shivered as though they knew something dark was about to happen. At the edge of the farmhouse she stood, hands pressed to her sides, her breath uneven. Her ribs ached, the sting sharp and insistent, a reminder of the cruel words and crueler hands that had struck her only hours ago. Her beta, the one she had trusted more than anyone, had demanded the money from selling her farm. This farm was not merely land. It was history, blood, and memory wrapped in soil. Generations of her family had nurtured it, fought for it, and protected it with every ounce of their strength. And now he wanted to take it, as if it were nothing more than coins in a bag. She had refused. He had hit her. The memory of it burned in her mind, a flash of rage and disbelief. She had barely managed to pull herself from the floor when he left, the slamming of the door echoing like a judge's gavel. Outside, the sky darkened further, as if the world itself had recoiled at the violence. She knelt among the scattered seeds of her garden, her fingers trembling as she touched the soil. The earth felt alive beneath her fingertips, pulsing as though it understood her pain. She had always known there was a connection between herself and this land, a quiet, steady magic that had been with her since she was a child. And now, more than ever, she felt it calling, warning, aching with her. Her chest heaved, not from exertion but from the weight of betrayal. The beta had been more than a companion. He had been someone who had laughed with her, fought with her, and promised her loyalty. And yet, when the temptation of wealth came, he had cast aside that bond as if it had been nothing. Night crept across the farm, painting shadows across the fields and the weathered farmhouse. She wrapped herself in a blanket, shivering, not from cold but from fear and anger. Her ribs throbbed with every breath, and she realized that even her own strength could not have stopped him. For the first time, she felt the vulnerability that had always lurked beneath her stubborn courage. Then she sensed it. A presence heavy and commanding, not of this ordinary world. The hairs on the back of her neck stood on end. She rose to her feet, every sense alert. It was not the beta, not the wind, not the earth alone, but something else. Something ancient, powerful, and aware. From the shadows of the forest that bordered her land, a figure stepped forward. Tall, broad, and cloaked in a darkness that seemed to absorb the dim light of the evening, he moved with the grace of one accustomed to command. Every step carried authority, as if the ground itself bowed to his passage. Her heart raced, a mixture of fear and fascination. She had heard the tales whispered in neighboring villages, stories of alphas, legendary figures bound to the hierarchy, whose power could sway the balance of entire kingdoms. They were dangerous, they were feared, and they were said to judge all who crossed their path. And now one had come to her doorstep. "You are hurt," he said, his voice deep, resonant, and steady, like a bell in a cathedral. He stopped a few paces from her, yet it felt as though he were right beside her. This betrayal, it has awakened something. I can feel it." She wanted to step back, to hide, to scream, but the words would not come. Her fear clashed with curiosity, with the strange pull she felt toward him. She did not know if it was his presence, his aura of command, or something deeper, something that recognized her connection to the land, but she could not look away. I refused him," she managed, her voice hoarse. I cannot sell the farm. It belongs to my family, to me." The alpha studied her, the shadows of his hood revealing only the slightest glimpse of sharp eyes that seemed to see more than what lay before them. "And yet you were struck," he observed, "by one you trusted. The hierarchy has rules, but it does not forgive betrayal." Her chest tightened at the words. She did not know if he spoke of the beta or of her own weakness, but the truth was bitter either way. She had trusted, and she had been hurt. She had stood strong, yet the pain remained. The alpha stepped closer, each movement deliberate, measured, like the slow turning of a tide. She felt a heat in the air, a tangible energy that made her stomach twist and her pulse race. He did not reach for her, did not touch her, yet every fiber of her being felt the weight of his attention. "The land," he said, nodding toward the fields, "is alive. It senses loyalty, fear, and deceit. You are tied to it in ways you do not yet understand. And now someone has disturbed its balance." She swallowed hard, her fingers tightening on the blanket around her shoulders. I do not know what to do. He might return." "He will," the Alpha said simply. "And when he does, he will not find you weak. But you will need strength you do not yet possess. That is why I am here." Her mind spun. Who was he to say this? Who was he to offer help? And yet the words carried a weight she could not deny. He was no ordinary man. He was something else entirely. Before she could question further, a howl cut through the night air, a deep, chilling sound that seemed to vibrate through the earth itself. The beta's laughter followed, distant but unmistakable, carried on the wind. The fear surged again, sharp and immediate. The Alpha's eyes narrowed and he turned toward the sound, a dark silhouette against the dim sky. "He tests you," the Alpha said, "but he does not yet know the consequences of his actions. That is why I remain for now." A storm broke overhead, lightning splitting the sky and thunder shaking the air. Rain began to fall in harsh sheets, soaking the fields and plastering her hair to her face. Yet she did not move. She could not move. Something about the Alpha's presence held her in place, a mixture of awe, fear, and a strange longing. "Why are you here?" she whispered, though even her own voice sounded small in the storm. "To ensure that justice is served," he replied. "And to see if you are capable of standing when the world wishes to break you." She wanted to argue, to tell him she could manage on her own, but the truth burned her tongue. She had been broken, and she had no illusions about her own vulnerability. She could stand, yes, but only with guidance, only with power beyond her own. He stepped closer again, and the air shifted. The trees bent as if listening, the ground thrumming with energy beneath their feet. She felt a pull toward him, a silent, unspoken command that made her knees weak and her heart flutter. "You will not face him alone," the Alpha said, "but you must decide if you are willing to accept what I offer. My protection is not free. It comes with rules, with obligations, and with a path that may change everything you thought you knew." Her breath caught. Everything about him radiated authority, yet also safety, a paradox she did not understand but could not ignore. The howl came again, closer this time, and with it the unmistakable echo of movement through the forest. The beta was returning, angry and reckless. The protagonist's pulse quickened, fear and resolve fighting for dominance. I don't know if I can trust you," she said, voice trembling. I barely know you." "Trust is earned," the Alpha replied, "and tested. Soon you will know if you are ready. For tonight survive, and listen." Lightning split the sky again, illuminating his face just enough to reveal eyes like molten gold, fierce and penetrating. She felt as though he could see into the very marrow of her bones, the very pulse of the land beneath her feet. The beta's voice, sharp and demanding, cut through the rain once more. "Give me the money, you hear me, or I'll—" But before he could finish, the Alpha moved. Not fast, not hurriedly, but with an inevitability that shook her to the core. A shadow fell over the beta, a presence so overwhelming that the wind seemed to stop in respect. The howl died on his lips, replaced by a cautious retreat. Her eyes widened. The Alpha's power was unlike anything she had imagined, ancient and absolute. Yet he did not strike fully. He merely warned, a single gesture of dominance that sent the beta stumbling back into the darkness. The storm raged on, and she sank to her knees again, exhausted and overwhelmed. She could not speak. She could not comprehend. But deep within, a spark ignited, a spark of hope, of possibility, and of fear mingled with longing. The Alpha knelt beside her, voice gentle but firm. "Tonight is only the beginning. The hierarchy watches, the land remembers, and your choices will shape more than your own fate." Rest now, for tomorrow the trials begin." She nodded weakly, unable to speak, her heart pounding in rhythm with the storm. The beta's threat had not ended, it had only shifted. And yet, somewhere in the shadows, she sensed a new power, a new protector, and perhaps a new path forward. Lightning illuminated the farmhouse one last time before the night swallowed it again. She closed her eyes, the rain washing over her, and allowed herself a single thought. She would survive, she would rise, and she would not be broken again. But deep in the forest, unseen and patient, the Alpha's gaze remained fixed on the farm, waiting for the moment when destiny would demand her full courage, and when the beta would return to test her again. And somewhere in the wind and the wild, the world seemed to whisper a warning. The story had only begun. Dawn broke slowly over the farm, spreading pale light across the fields that had once felt so safe. The rain had passed, leaving a thin mist that clung to the ground and wrapped the trees in silver. The young woman rose from the soil, her ribs still sore but her spirit refusing to bow. She had survived the beta's attack, yet she knew the danger had not ended. His greed was a storm that would return, and she was unprepared for the fury he could unleash. But the Alpha had remained through the night. She had seen him only in shadows at first, silent and watchful, like a guardian of the wild. His presence was overwhelming yet steady, an anchor in a world that had begun to tilt around her. He approached now, his cloak brushing the dew-covered grass, eyes calm and calculating. The storm of the previous night had left the air heavy with energy, and she could feel it humming beneath her skin. She did not move from the doorway of the farmhouse, unsure whether to step forward or flee. "You did not rest," he observed, voice low and measured, "and yet you survived. That speaks of more than stubbornness." Her lips trembled, caught between words she could not find. I could not hide. He might return, I must." "Survival alone is not enough," the Alpha interrupted. "You must learn to command the forces around you. The land, the hierarchy, even your own strength, they are all part of you. But first you must see what you truly are." She studied him, uncertain. "What do you mean?" He extended a hand, not touching her but pointing toward the fields. "Step into the light of the morning. Feel the earth beneath your feet. Hear it." She obeyed hesitantly, her toes pressing into the wet soil. The land pulsed beneath her, faintly at first, then stronger as though recognizing her presence. She closed her eyes, and a tremor ran through her chest. Memories of her family's care, of seasons turned and storms weathered, rose like whispers. The Alpha watched her closely, silent and still, yet every movement he made seemed to command the very air. "This land is alive," he said finally. "It has waited for one who can honor it, protect it, and survive its trials. You are not yet ready, but you are close." Her heartbeat quickened. "I don't know if I am. I was broken yesterday. He hurt me. How can I be strong after that?" The Alpha stepped closer, the mist curling around him like smoke. "Strength is not the absence of pain. Strength is rising when the world wishes to break you. You will find that in yourself, not in fear, not in anger, but in clarity. The beta sought to destroy you. I will show you how to survive him, and perhaps more than him." The words were both frightening and intoxicating. She wanted to ask more, but before she could, a distant cry cut through the morning fog. The beta had not waited. His anger had carried through the night, and he was coming again, more determined than ever. The Alpha's eyes darkened. "He tests you," he said. "And tests do not wait, you must be ready." He gestured toward the farmhouse. "Inside now, I will teach you what you need." She followed him hesitantly. Inside, the house was quiet, the remnants of her night's terror still visible, the overturned chair, the scattered seeds. The Alpha moved through the space like he belonged to it, though it was clear he had never set foot here before. He paused by the window, looking out into the misted fields. "Your connection to the land is unusual," he observed. "Most who inherit power from it do not feel it so keenly. It is tied to your bloodline, yes, but also to your spirit. That is why the beta's actions are so dangerous, not just to you, but to the farm itself. She shivered, understanding for the first time that her family's land was not merely a home. It was alive, and it had responded to her pain and the betrayal she had endured. Then, how do I protect it? She asked, her voice small but steady. The Alpha turned to her fully now, his presence filling the room. By learning to channel what you feel, by understanding the forces that surround you, by refusing to be a victim of circumstance, and by facing the beta not with fear but with clarity. Her stomach twisted. The idea of facing him again made her chest ache, but the thought of running felt hollow. She had survived once. She could survive again, but only if she learned how. You will not be alone, the Alpha said, stepping closer. I will guide you, but the effort must come from you. You cannot rely on me to do your fighting, only to show you the way. She nodded, determination mingling with fear. I want to learn. Good, he replied. Then we begin. Over the next hours, the Alpha taught her to sense the land's energy, to hear its whispers, to feel the rhythm of the earth beneath her feet. At first, it was confusing, frustrating, and exhausting. Her mind wanted to run, her body wanted to rest, but the Alpha was patient, his voice firm and calm, guiding her with precision. Do not fight the energy, he instructed. Flow with it. Do not resist what is natural. It is part of you as much as the blood in your veins. She obeyed, cautiously at first, and then with growing confidence. The ache in her ribs was still there, but she discovered that when she focused, she could move without pain, or at least feel the power within herself surpass it. Each small success ignited something within her, a spark of possibility, of resilience. The storm outside had cleared completely, leaving only the soft drizzle of mist, yet the air still hummed with tension. The beta could return at any moment, and the Alpha had made it clear that preparation was key. As they worked together, a strange bond began to form. She was cautious, wary of trust, yet there was something in his presence that felt protective rather than commanding. He never forced her, never touched her, but every glance carried authority and every word carried weight. You are ready for more than survival, he said finally, as the sun began to climb above the horizon. But you must decide how far you will go. The beta is not the only danger. There are forces in this kingdom that respect no law and fear no bond. You will need strength to face them as well. Her mind whirled. She wanted to ask what he meant, but the moment passed. The distant sound of movement in the forest reminded her that the beta had not been idle. He was still out there, scheming, hunting, and determined. Before she could respond, a sharp cry broke the morning air, the beta. He had come. The Alpha's eyes narrowed, a flicker of dark power lighting them. He underestimates you, he said, but he will not underestimate me. Stand behind me and listen. The first test of your strength begins now. The beta emerged from the mist, eyes blazing with greed and fury. Give me the money, he shouted. You cannot escape me this time. The young woman felt fear coil in her chest, but she also felt the power she had begun to awaken. The land pulsed beneath her feet, steady and strong, and she realized she was not alone. The Alpha moved forward, his presence like a shadow stretching across the field, a force that seemed larger than life. The beta faltered, a flicker of doubt in his eyes. He had expected weakness, and instead he faced something far stronger than he imagined. You will not take what is not yours, the Alpha said, his voice calm, yet filled with authority. Step back. The beta's anger surged, but the confidence he had relied upon crumbled. He had underestimated the power that now protected the farm, the land, and the young woman herself. She felt a thrill of fear and excitement, the first time since the attack that she sensed possibility instead of despair. The land hummed beneath her and she felt her strength returning, slow and steady. The beta retreated, snarling, realizing he had lost this battle. Yet his retreat was not a surrender, it was a promise. He would return, angrier and more dangerous than before. The alpha's gaze turned to her, sharp and commanding. "Do you understand now?" he asked. "Survival is not enough. You must grow. You must become stronger than fear, stronger than anger, stronger than him. Only then will you be safe." She nodded, understanding. The path ahead was not easy, but for the first time she felt she could walk it. She was not a victim. She was not powerless. The storm had passed, the forest was quiet once more, but the tension lingered. The beta had not been defeated, he had only been delayed. And somewhere in the distance the wind carried a warning. The trials had only begun. The alpha's eyes met hers, steady and unwavering. "Rest now. Tomorrow we begin again. And when the beta returns, you will be ready." She swallowed, nodding, and for the first time in hours she allowed herself to feel hope. She was not alone. She had power, and though the road ahead was dangerous, she would walk it, step by step, guided by the alpha and the land that had never abandoned her. And somewhere beyond the farm the shadows shifted, waiting. The story was far from over. The morning fog clung to the farm like a ghost, wrapping the fields in silver mist. The young woman stood barefoot on the soft earth, the alpha's cloak brushing past her as he moved behind her. His presence was steady, unyielding, and commanding, a shadow that seemed to blend with the land itself. "Feel it," he said, voice low and certain. "Every step you take, the ground responds. Every breath, every heartbeat is connected to the land. You cannot fight it, you cannot ignore it. You must become one with it." She focused, drawing a deep breath, and slowly the vibration beneath her feet grew louder. It was a pulse, steady and alive, like the beat of her own heart multiplied across acres of soil. She wavered, uncertain, but the alpha's hand on her shoulder was a steadying weight. "Good," he murmured. "Now move." Her legs obeyed, cautious at first, then with a growing confidence. The energy of the land rose through her, strong and warm, pushing the ache in her ribs aside. She moved across the field, sensing the wind, the grass, the whisper of hidden roots beneath the soil. "You are learning faster than I expected," the alpha said, voice calm yet carrying a hint of admiration. "But learning is only the first step. You must control it or it will control you." She nodded, determination hardening within her. I want to control it. I will." The alpha's gaze swept over the horizon, sharp and alert. "Good, because the beta will return, and this time he will bring more than anger. He will bring chaos. You must be ready for everything." The beta's name alone caused a shiver to run down her spine. He had been cruel, violent, and relentless, yet each memory of him strengthened her resolve. She would not be weak again. She would not be afraid. Days passed in a blur of training, practice, and quiet reflection. The alpha pushed her relentlessly, teaching her to sense danger, to draw strength from the land, and to channel the energy of the hierarchy into her own body. Each lesson left her exhausted but stronger. "You are learning to survive," he said one evening as they stood on the ridge overlooking the valley, "but survival is not enough. You must learn to act with clarity, not emotion. Fear and anger can sharpen you, but they can also blind you. Control them or they will destroy you." She struggled with the words, her mind still haunted by the beta's betrayal, by the pain of his hands, by the fear she had felt when he had returned. But she listened, absorbing the alpha's guidance, letting it sink into her bones. At night the farm was quiet except for the soft rustle of wind through the trees. Yet she could feel it, the beta's presence lingering, a shadow at the edge of her mind. He had not given up, he would not. "You feel him," the alpha said softly, as if reading her thoughts. "Good. That awareness will save you, but you must not let him consume your focus. There is more at stake than his anger. The land, the hierarchy, your own future, these are what matter." She nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. I understand." One night as the moon rose pale and cold, the beta struck again. This time he was not alone. Shadows moved behind him, figures drawn to his greed and ambition, followers who had tasted his cruelty and now sought to share it. The young woman felt fear coil in her stomach, but it was no longer paralyzing. The land thrummed beneath her feet, responding to her presence, and she could feel the Alpha's power beside her, a constant grounding force. "Stand firm," the Alpha instructed. "Do not flinch. Trust the land, trust yourself." The Beta's voice cut through the night air, sharp and demanding. "Give me what is mine, you cannot hide from me." She stepped forward, heart pounding but not in fear. She could feel the land beneath her, strong and steady. She could sense the Alpha's presence guiding her, steadying her. And she could sense her own strength, growing with every heartbeat. "You will not take what is not yours," she said, her voice steady, carrying across the field like a declaration. "Leave now or face the consequences." The Beta laughed, cruel and defiant, but the laugh faltered as he realized she did not tremble. He advanced, but the ground beneath him shifted subtly, as though the land itself resisted his steps. The young woman drew on the lessons the Alpha had taught her. She moved with the pulse of the earth, feeling the rhythm of the wind, the strength in the soil, the energy in the trees. Every movement was deliberate, every breath controlled. The Beta's allies hesitated, unsure, sensing the power she had begun to command. And the Beta, he faltered too, the arrogance in his eyes cracking just enough for fear to seep in. "You underestimate me," the Alpha said from behind her, calm but deadly. "And you underestimate her. That is your mistake." The Beta hesitated, then snarled, retreating slightly but not fully defeated. He would return, of that she was certain. Yet in that moment she realized something crucial. She was no longer powerless. She had learned, she had grown. She had begun to command strength that could rival even the Beta's cruelty. After the confrontation, the young woman collapsed onto the grass, breath coming in sharp, ragged bursts. The Alpha knelt beside her, calm and steady, watching her with eyes that seemed to see more than her own self-awareness. "You did well," he said. "Far better than I expected. But remember, strength is not only about confrontation. It is about understanding when to act, when to wait, and when to use the power you have wisely." She looked up at him, her chest still heaving. I don't know if I am ready." "You are more ready than you think," he replied. "But there is one thing you must learn above all. Your power is tied to choice. Every action you take shapes who you become, who you protect, and who you defeat. Choose wisely." The young woman nodded, letting his words sink in. She could feel the weight of responsibility pressing against her, heavy but not crushing. The land had responded to her growth, and she could feel its strength flowing through her veins. The days that followed were filled with rigorous training. The Alpha taught her not only how to defend herself, but how to anticipate danger, to read people, to sense dishonesty and intent. She practiced long into the night, moving with the rhythm of the land, her body and mind synchronizing with the pulse of the farm. Slowly the ache from her ribs faded. Slowly the fear that had once ruled her began to weaken. And slowly she began to realize that the Alpha's presence was not only protection, it was a challenge, a mirror, and perhaps something more. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, she felt a shift in the air. The Beta was near, closer than before, his intentions clear and dangerous. The wind carried the scent of him, sharp and greedy. The Alpha moved beside her, calm and unreadable. "He tests you," he said, "and soon he will test everything you have learned. Tonight you will face the final challenge of this phase. Are you ready?" She swallowed hard, feeling the land beneath her feet, the energy within her body, and the Alpha's steady presence at her side. I think so," she said, her voice trembling but determined. "Good," he replied. "Then listen carefully. Trust your instincts, trust the land. And above all, trust yourself." The Beta emerged from the mist, his eyes blazing with fury. His followers hesitated, unsure, sensing the growing strength of the young woman. He advanced, claws and teeth hidden but menace clear, intent on taking what he believed was his. She breathed deeply, closing her eyes for a moment, feeling the pulse of the land, the rhythm of her heartbeat. the flow of energy that the alpha had helped her awaken. When she opened her eyes, they shone with clarity and focus. "You will not take this," she said, voice ringing across the field. "I am stronger than you know. I will not be afraid." The beta snarled and lunged forward, but she moved with the rhythm of the earth, evading, redirecting, and guiding him without striking. The land responded, slowing his movements, tripping him with hidden roots, shifting the ground beneath him. The alpha watched silently, letting her act, guiding without intervening. And for the first time, she realized that her power was not just survival. It was control, it was understanding, it was connection. The beta's allies retreated, sensing defeat, and finally the beta himself fell back, chest heaving, pride wounded, yet alive. He had been challenged, and he had lost. The young woman collapsed onto the grass, exhausted but victorious. The alpha knelt beside her, calm and steady, watching her with approval. "You have grown," he said softly, "far beyond what I expected. But remember, the hierarchy never rests, and neither should you. The trials continue, and so does your path." She nodded, her chest heaving, her heart pounding, yet stronger than ever before. For the first time since the beta's betrayal, she felt a sense of triumph, a spark of hope, and the certainty that she could face whatever came next. And somewhere, deep in the shadows beyond the farm, the wind carried a whisper of warning. The story was far from over, and the greatest trial was yet to come. The night was still, but not quiet. The farm lay under a heavy moon, its silver light washing over fields that had become both sanctuary and battlefield. The young woman stood at the edge of her land, the pulse of the earth beneath her feet steady and strong. Her muscles were sore, her breath came in measured bursts, but she felt more alive than ever before. Beside her, the alpha moved like a shadow of the night itself, silent, unwavering, and yet somehow reassuring. His eyes, molten and piercing, scanned the horizon as if reading the very heartbeat of the world. "They will come," he said softly. "He will not give up. The beta cannot accept defeat. Tonight you will face him fully." Her chest tightened, not with fear but with the anticipation of what she had prepared for. She had trained, she had grown, she had learned to draw strength from the land, from herself, and from the alpha's guidance. She could feel her power, steady and alive, thrumming through her veins. "I am ready," she said, voice firm. The alpha inclined his head. "Good, but remember, strength is not only in force, it is in choice. Every action you take will shape your destiny. Choose wisely." The wind carried movement from the distant woods. Figures emerged from the shadows, loyal followers of the beta, their faces twisted with anger and anticipation. And then he appeared, the beta himself, eyes blazing with greed and fury, his chest heaving as he surveyed the field before him. "You cannot keep what is mine," he shouted, voice cutting through the night air. "Give me the farm, or I will take it by force." The young woman inhaled deeply, feeling the rhythm of the land beneath her, the flow of energy through her body, and the steady presence of the alpha at her side. She did not raise a weapon. She did not flinch. She simply stood, rooted to the earth, ready. "You will not take this," she said, voice carrying like a promise. "I am not afraid, and I will not be broken again." The beta's lips curled in a snarl, but the moment he advanced, the earth seemed to rise against him. Hidden roots twisted beneath his feet, slowing his steps. The wind shifted, pushing at him, while the trees whispered warnings. The followers faltered, sensing the strength that radiated from her. The alpha remained silent, watching, guiding, yet allowing her to act. She moved then, not with haste, not with anger, but with precision. Every step she took was in rhythm with the pulse of the land. Every breath aligned with the energy coursing through her. The beta lunged, but she sidestepped, feeling the land respond, bending to her will. The roots caught him, the soil resisting him, and his pride faltered. He stumbled, glaring, but he did not retreat. His fury burned brighter, more dangerous than ever. "You underestimate me," the alpha's voice cut across the night, calm yet deadly. "And you underestimate her. That is your mistake." The young woman's eyes blazed, but her mind was clear. She did not strike in anger. She guided him, forced him into missteps, used his own momentum against him. The land obeyed her, moving with her intent, bending with her will. The followers faltered, then fled, sensing defeat. The beta's rage roared, but even he began to realize he could not prevail. Not against the land, not against her, not against the force she had become. At last he fell to his knees, chest heaving, pride wounded, yet alive. He looked at her with something like disbelief, and perhaps the faintest flicker of respect. He had been challenged, and he had lost. The young woman's legs trembled, but she remained standing, rooted to the earth. The Alpha approached, his presence a steadying force beside her. "You have done well," he said softly, "far beyond what I expected, but the journey does not end here. Remember, every choice you make shapes the world around you." She exhaled, the weight of the past weeks lifting, replaced by a quiet clarity. She had faced betrayal, fear, and pain. She had trained, grown, and mastered her strength. And now she stood victorious, not only over the beta but over her own doubts and fear. The Alpha's gaze softened, though his presence remained commanding. "You have learned to survive, to fight, and to lead," he said. "But there is one thing more you must understand. Strength alone is not enough. It is what you do with it and how you honor it that defines you." Her mind absorbed his words. She thought of the farm, the land that had guided her, the earth that had responded to her will. She thought of the beta, not as an enemy to destroy, but as a force that had tested her and shown her the limits she had to overcome. "I understand," she said finally, voice steady and sure. "I will honor it. I will protect what is mine, and I will not let fear or anger guide me." The Alpha inclined his head, approval in his silent gaze. "Then you are ready," he said, "ready for whatever comes next." The wind stirred, carrying distant sounds, the echo of movement beyond the farm. She knew the beta's threat was not entirely gone, yet for the first time she felt capable of facing it. She was not alone. She was strong, and she had choice. As the moon rose high, casting silver light across the fields, she allowed herself a moment of quiet triumph. The farm was hers. The land was alive, and she had awakened a power she had never imagined. The Alpha stood beside her, silent and watchful, yet somehow protective. She did not need his hand, his shield, or his command. She needed his guidance, his presence, his steady force. And perhaps, in time, something more. The beta retreated into the shadows, defeated but alive, a warning that the trials of the world were never truly over. And somewhere, deep in the night, the land whispered approval, a quiet hum that thrummed with the strength of its guardian. The young woman turned her gaze to the horizon, the first light of dawn brushing the edges of the sky. She felt a profound sense of clarity. The farm was hers, her destiny was hers, and she would face whatever came next with courage, wisdom, and the power she had earned. The Alpha watched her, and for a moment his gaze softened. "You are no longer a student," he said quietly. "You are a force. Remember that. And remember, your choices define you more than any battle or any enemy ever could." She nodded, understanding fully. The story had tested her, broken her, and rebuilt her stronger than before. She had faced betrayal, fear, and danger, and emerged with clarity, power, and purpose. And as the first birds of morning sang their song across the farm, a distant howl echoed, soft, yet full of promise and warning. The hierarchy still stirred, the land still breathed, and her story was far from over. But she was ready. She was no longer afraid. She was the keeper of the land, the master of her own strength, and a force the world would never forget. And beside her the Alpha remained, a shadow, a guide, a partner in the quiet strength she had discovered within herself. The night ended, but the legend had only begun.